Circle of Life in Jesus' Name, Part 3, Chapter 29, which is the last chapter. Inside, the adults were having their own conversations. Sitting around the kitchen table, Jeffy was nursing little Elijah, who was hidden under the receiving blanket on Jeffy's shoulder. The baby was already nicknamed Eli. Next to Jeffy, Kimmy was complaining that her little baby boy was never going to come out, while Cam spoke to Jensen about when he and Jeffy were in Africa just a few years earlier. Also in the kitchen was Jewel Perez and Shelley, though Jewel was telling Shelley to go sit down. Jewel insisted that all the entrees were either in one of the two ovens, the crock pots were simmering, the side dishes were all ready, and she was just making up a few sauces. The buffet was already set up. They were feeding about 40 people, and everything would be ready soon, and when it was, she would get help to set it all out. Now go rest, Jewel insisted. Shelley headed out to the living room where everyone else sat talking and went to where her husband sat in his wing-back chair and took a seat on his lap. "Well, hello there," he said with a smile as she leaned in and briefly kissed her husband's lips. She smiled. "Hey, Jewel has officially thrown me out of my own kitchen." "And you're complaining?" "Nope, just explaining." "Well, you don't have to explain anything to me, Shelley girl." She grinned. "I wasn't explaining to you." The group of people laughed. "So what time is your flight out tomorrow?" David Keith asked. "I'm sorry, I am been traveling and I am in Texas and the allergies are getting to me." "Okay." "So what time is your flight out tomorrow?" David Keith asked. "The flight leaves at 8 a.m., Ricky offered. "Oh, so you'll have to be at the airport by 6? "By 7. We're going on an Ameritech jet, so different airport." "Oh, do you always fly with Ameritech?" "No, but whenever we can hitch a ride, we do." David looked over at Jason. "Well, that is very nice of you." Jason smiled. "No, it's not. They pay for the cost, and if not for Grandmaster Keno, there wouldn't be an Ameritech, so he allows me to show my gratitude every once in a while by giving him or his family a ride. No big deal." Mark smiled at the Keiths. "So, tell me, what is your family doing for Thanksgiving? Do you have other family?" Carol nodded. "I have a sister who usually joins us with her husband and 2 kids, and David's parents always come too." "Oh, so you'll have a house full," Bella said. Carol smiled. "Well, that's what I thought until I came here today. I mean, I'll have 11 people. I was trying to count everyone here today, and there's like 40 people here. And there would be 2 more if Mickey and Jeff were here." "Speaking of Mickey and Jeff, what's the latest?" Angel asked. "Well, I just spoke to Jeff about 30 minutes ago," Bree said. "She's still in labor. The baby was posterior, but now that they have her turned, they're hoping things will go much faster. They're talking about a possible C-section, but of course, Mickey's not wanting to go that route. Her blood pressure dropped a few times, but she's stable right now." "Gosh, she's been in labor now about 18 hours, hasn't she? I mean, that can't be good," Angel said. Shelley smiled. "Well, Jeffy says she's okay and the baby's coming soon." Angel nodded. "Well, okay then. I guess I won't worry if Jeffy says so." "So, will the Davises be all alone for Thanksgiving then, since you're all going off?" Carol asked. "No, assuming all goes well today, they're going to drive to visit Jeff's parents. They always have Thanksgiving with Jeff's parents," Ricky said. "And you're going out to have Thanksgiving with Gabe's family?" David asked. "Well, not exactly," Joey answered. "We're going out to have Thanksgiving at Gabe's Community Center in Pine Forest, Georgia, only we're going to be the ones serving it." Mark smiled at the look of confusion. Gabe's Community Center, which is run by Gabe's sister Rose, is busing in people from all around the county and surrounding counties, and their goal is to feed at least 5,000. You know, like in the Bible, when Jesus feeds the 5,000. "Oh," Carol said. "Well, that's quite an undertaking." Grandmaster Keno nodded. "It is. And when they invited our family to forego our usual Thanksgiving and come and help, it sounded to us like a really fun and wonderful thing to do, and we were very grateful to be invited." "Well, how in the world are you going to make that happen?" David asked. "I can't wrap my mind around how to even get started on something like that." Eric nodded. Well, Rose has a lot of people around her who are used to putting together large meals, but she's actually doing it by faith. By faith? Eric nodded. She's taking the first steps without really knowing exactly how it's all going to come together. It's a great way to test and build our faith. She's showing trust in God. First, she felt like God was whispering to her to do this. Then she decided to accept the challenge. Then she prayed and asked God where to even begin. And that very morning, the mayor of Pine Forest stopped into the center to see how it was going and if there was anything he could do for them, especially with the holidays approaching. She told the mayor what she felt God was telling her to do, and the mayor immediately got started with permits and volunteers and retired school bus drivers. Retired drivers? Yes, because they don't have that many people in Pine County who are homeless or in need of help, so they'd have to reach out to other counties, and to do that, they would need to transport them. Then there were legal issues and extra insurance and extra needed facilities, which ended up being a giant tent. Breeze grinned. Like the tabernacle. Joey nodded at his wife. And then, after her talk with the mayor, she asked God to show her the next thing she needed to do. And when she woke up the next morning, she clicked on something in her email that was an advertisement for a class at the local college that was teaching about catering large events. So she took a class on catering? No, Eric went on. She met with the school and the teacher, and in exchange for allowing students to work hands-on, and also in exchange for huge free nationwide publicity for the college, they're teaching her step by step what she has to do and helping her to accomplish each step. Okay, that is amazing. Right? Shelley said. And some people would think those things were just a coincidence, but there's no such thing as coincidences. So the test is, do we acknowledge God's hand and his messages? If we deny them, then he will eventually stop speaking to us. But if we can show just the tiniest bit of faith, then he will speak to us and show us things and teach us, and a real relationship begins to develop. Eric nodded and smiled at his wife. And now I'm told that they have it all planned out and just need bodies to do all of the things. So we're going to go provide a few of those bodies. Well, what are you assigned to do? David asked. Eric smiled. Well, I don't know yet. But whatever it is, I'll give it my all, and I'm sure my family will give it their all, and I'll use this time to teach my little ones how fulfilling it is to serve others. What if you get assigned to clean up? Well, then that place will be cleaner than it's ever been, Justin put in. David turned to him. Oh, are you and your wife going to? Justin shook his head. No, my wife and I have been invited over to my brother's home for Thanksgiving. My niece Kimmy is due any time now, so we're going to hang out there. Who knows, David, Eric went on. If this turns into a yearly thing, maybe your family can come with us next year. David nodded. Well, that would be a great goal. But before we get ahead of ourselves, though, I guess we should see if Melody and Logan are still together by then. Eric shrugged. Well, if they're not, they will acknowledge that it wasn't meant to be, thank each other for the time they spent together, and move on as friends. At least that's how it should be when people or kids are dating. Either way, we don't discard friends, and we consider you and your family friends. Yep, Jason said quickly. Once you've been adopted into the Keno family, they will rarely let go of you. You'd have to do something pretty bad to have that happen. David laughed. I didn't realize we'd been adopted. People rarely do, Justin answered. They don't realize that it's happening until after the fact, and suddenly they find they have this giant group of very influential people covering their six. What Justin means is, Eric began, we're friends, and if you ever need anything, help with anything at all, feel free to call on us. There isn't much we can't figure out a solution to. They looked up as they heard a loud cheer coming from the backyard, and Shelley listened carefully. She smiled. Well, it sounds like laughter and not crying, so I think they're okay. Someone must have done a great trick on the trampoline, Joey said. Jewel came into the room. Okay, Miss Shelley, I promised to tell you when things were ready, and we're ready. Shelley stood. Okay, men, as much as I know you want to come help, it will be too crowded in the kitchen, so ladies, come help us put everything out buffet style, and guys, go gather the munchkins from the trampoline. They all stood to do as ordered when Bree's phone rang. Wait a minute, Bree said as she answered her phone. Hey, Jeff, give me some good news. She put the phone on speaker. And I have you on speaker, so don't say anything ugly about Ricky. Jeff laughed. Hello, everyone. I just thought I'd let you greet the father of a 7-pound, 8-ounce baby girl with a head full of dark hair. The room erupted with cheers and hoots and hollers. Hey, you guys, she is so beautiful. Jeff's voice choked with emotion. I'm sure she is, Bree said. And how is Mickey? She is awesome and relieved and very, very tired. I bet. So I just spoke to Dan and Jeremy. Oh, that must have been the big scream we heard from the backyard. He laughed. Yep. And I told them to go ahead and eat, and I'll come to get them in about an hour or so. You stay with Mickey, Ricky said. After we eat, I'll bring the boys to you. And I have a feeling my wife will want to come along. Oh, you're right about that, Bree said. Okay, Rick, that would be great. Thanks so much. We are kind of tired. And hungry, I bet. I'll pack you and Mickey up some of this good, wholesome food and some raw milk for Mickey and bring it up. Wow. Again, that would be great. Thanks so much. It'll be our pleasure. And Bree and Jewel and Bella and Breeze have already made you guys a week's worth of meals, so we'll take those to your house. Good grief, Rick. Any other blessings you guys want to lay on me? Absolutely, but we'll do that in person. See you soon. Bree ended the call and smiled at everyone. Let's eat. New scene, but it's still Sunday, that evening. I didn't realize that walking on the beach at night was so romantic, Melody said as she squeezed the strong hand that held hers. Logan smiled and brought her hand up to his lips and placed a soft kiss on her knuckles. He glanced up to make sure the house was no longer in view because he wanted privacy. He stopped, turned, and faced the ocean. There's a power here, he said softly. I can't really put it into words, but I'm trying to in a song I've been writing. A lot of songs have been written about the sea, the waves, the ebb and the flow, the connection of sea to land and of us to God. I'm struggling with putting what I feel into words. She looked up at him. Well, the words you just said, they describe this feeling, like the feeling that there is power here, so much so that it's impossible to describe, but you still feel that it connects you to God. The fact that you feel you can't put it into words actually says a lot. He gazed down at her, a look of awe on his face. Melody, he said reverently as he cupped her face in his right hand. What you just said, it was perfect. And I think you just wrote my song for me. He rubbed his thumb over her cheek. You are so beautiful. Outwardly, yes, but also on the inside. And you're brilliant. Are you sure you're only 18? She smiled. Well, I'll be 19 in about 4 months. Oh, so that explains it, he said with a laugh. He sat down on the sand and patted the spot next to him. They sat side by side, listening to the sound of the waves crashing on the shore. The sky was clear and the stars twinkled brightly overhead. What are you thinking about? He asked. She smiled up at him. I was thinking how grateful I am to have waited on your grandparents that day at the restaurant, and then to come and work for them, and mostly to have met you. Meeting you, Logan, she sighed. You have changed my life. I have? How? We've only been on a few dates. I know, right? But everything seems different. I wake up in the morning and immediately think of you, which immediately makes me think of God, because you told me that the first thing you do when you wake up is thank God for another day to serve Him. So I think of you, and then I thank God for another day. And I thank Him especially if I'm going to see you that day. He turned his head to smile at her. I do that too. She looked up at him. You do? Oh, absolutely. I think about you when I wake up. I wonder what you're doing, and I have to make myself focus on other things, but it's hard because I can't wait to see you again. So I start trying to think of ways to get to see you. She stood up, a sweet smile on her face. Where are you going? He said, looking up at her. Nowhere, she said as she moved forward, straddled his legs, and sat on his lap, facing him. His eyes opened wide. Wow, now this is a gift. She put her arms around his neck. I'm sorry if this is too forward, but I'm feeling a little clingy. I mean, you're going away, and I'm going to miss you so much. He chuckled. You cling as much as you want, Melody. I'm feeling a little clingy myself. He wrapped his arms around her waist and pulled her forward. Their mouths came together in a soft, exploring kiss. He stopped and had to take a very deep breath to get control of himself. How will I get by without you for 8 days? She said softly. Well, focus only on the present moment, he advised. I'm not sure if I can. You keep popping into my mind all the time. He nodded and kissed her again, then pulled away and looked deeply into her eyes. I'm going to have a hard time too, but I've learned to take care of business no matter how I'm feeling. Yeah, that's a guy thing. He grinned. Maybe, but it'll work for you too. Like, I'm going to be working with people who are struggling in life. Maybe homeless, maybe just having a hard year and barely able to make ends meet. Maybe struggling with addiction or with depression. I can't have my mind wandering away from what God may be telling me to do for them. I have to think of them. I have to stay in tune with God's voice so I'll know what to do. I wouldn't want to come home after such a great opportunity to serve others and realize that I didn't do anything other than think of the people in front of me. Your girl. I like that. I do too. Anyway, so you can do the same thing while you're here. You said you now think of God first thing in the morning, right? She nodded. So ask him, what can I do today, Father, to serve you? What does my mother need help with? What do my brothers need? What does the cashier at the grocery store need? What does the person in the car next to you need? I found a stronger faith. God, how can I show that to the world around me? She sighed and nodded as she thought of his words. I will do that, Logan. I can do that. He smiled. Good. And I will too, and then maybe I could call you each night and we could tell each other what we accomplished during the day. Would that be okay? If you call me, yeah, she said with a laugh as she leaned forward, her knees digging into the sand, and kissed him. He sighed in pleasure, his hands sliding down to either side of her hips, and drawing another deep breath, he grabbed her and pushed her off of his lap to lay her down in the sand. He hovered over her, softly kissing her face. She sighed. Why did you push me off you? Because my mind was going places it didn't need to go. Oh, she thought about it and smiled. Sorry. He smiled, leaned down, and kissed her again. It's weird though, Logan, she said once he'd pulled back to look at her. What? I mean, before that first real date, I was okay with not seeing you every day or hearing from you every day. I wasn't struggling like I am now. But it's like after that first kiss, it like woke me up to all these feelings I've been having about you. It brought them into focus, and now I can't be away from you without missing you terribly. I feel the same way, Melody, and you just made me think of something interesting. What? You said that first kiss woke you up. And that reminds me of the fairy tales where a prince kisses Sleeping Beauty and also a prince kisses Snow White, right? And both times they wake up. Melody giggled. I'm so impressed that you know fairy tales. Hey, some guys get to kiss a hot girl. We take notice of something like that. He joked. She giggled. Anyway, what I'm getting at is maybe those moments in the story are allegory for the way a guy kisses his girl and it awakens her to the feelings that happen only between a man and a woman. Wow, Logan, that is very poetic. He nodded thoughtfully. Thanks. And I'm just thinking about the movie producers and how now they've gone so obviously against God's laws. I bet they would hate that I can see a spark of something good and right and beautiful in those stories. You are blowing me away. Logan, you're being very impressive right now. You're so good, so deep. And I sense another song being written as we speak. He smiled. Me too. He shook his head. Sorry I got carried away with my thoughts. He smiled at her. Oh, Melody, I am going to miss you. Well, maybe instead of calling me every night, you can call me in the morning too. Just a short call. He thought, nodded, maybe. But the time difference but the time difference is 3 hours. If I call you like before I start working, it would be like 5 in the morning for you. That's okay. I don't mind. I mean, when I'm working, I usually get up by 6, so it's only an hour earlier. And maybe I can use the extra time to pray more or to read the Bible. Melody, what am I going to do with you? What do you mean? Everything you do and say, you're making my heart feel like it's going to explode. I am falling for you big time. Her breath hitched. He pulled back so he could see her face clearly, worried that he'd said too much. His brow creased. Mel, why are you crying? I'm sorry if I said too much. She sniffed and shook her head. You didn't say too much. I'm sorry. She drew a breath. You got to me, that's all. He used his thumbs to wipe away her tears. There, he said softly. He lowered his head and kissed her thoroughly, then stood up and held his hand out to her. I need to get you back before everyone thinks we were rude to stay gone so long. Sighing, she allowed him to pull her up, and they walked back down the beach toward the house, hand in hand. New scene. It's November 24th, Sunday evening. Joey Adams' home, Newport, California. Joey watched his wife as she brushed her long black hair at her dressing table in their bedroom. He smiled. He'd met her when he was 29. It wasn't long after that he married her. Back then, her black hair was curly. She eventually told him it was a perm and that she did it to be different from her sister. The perm had worn off, and she went back to her natural hair, which was only slightly wavy. She smiled at him with her big blue eyes. They'd now been married almost 9 years, and they have 3 children. Sophia, age 7, Kelson, who's about to be 4, and Ledger, who just turned 3 yesterday, and whose birthday celebration they just had earlier today. Thanks for getting Ledger to sleep for me, Bree said softly. I didn't think he'd ever wind down. Well, all that sugar didn't help, Joey said. Well, thank goodness it's only once a year, she challenged. Once a year? Well, maybe his birthday is only once a year, but then there's Sophia's, and Kelston's, and yours, and M's, and all the other people in the family. And next May, when all the little Kinos have their birthdays, we might as well just give up. Maybe we'll look into alternatives since it's getting to be so many. He smiled. Good idea. He moved forward and took the brush from her hand. Let me, he said softly. She watched him in the mirror. Her strong, very lethal husband could be so gentle. She was so in love with him. When he smiled, her heart almost stopped beating. He did so now. Are you tired, Breeze? I am. Well, come to bed and see if you can get some sleep. We have a big day tomorrow. Are you coming to bed too? Oh, absolutely. We might not have much privacy once we leave the house tomorrow morning, so come here and let me hold my sweet wife. You have a sweet wife? He smiled. I do. Would you like to meet her? Breeze frowned. Nah, she doesn't sound like much fun. He lifted her from her seat and carried her to bed. Oh, believe me, she is. New scene. Same night. Mark eased into bed beside his wife and rolled toward her and took her in his arms. She sighed and cuddled up close. Hello there, Master Mark. Hello there, Mrs. Adams. Are you excited about tomorrow? Yes, I'm looking forward to seeing our East Coast family, and I'm looking forward to serving so many of God's people. It should be an amazing experience, Mark said. So is that what you were lying here thinking about while I was finishing those briefs? No, actually, I'd gone nostalgic. Nostalgic? In what way? I was thinking about the time we ran into each other at the ice cream place and stood in line together, and I was really nervous. He placed his hand on her cheek. Yeah. Those were hard times, Bella. Why were you thinking about that? She smiled. I guess I was thinking about the ice cream. He chuckled. Are you having cravings? Maybe, she admitted. Do you want me to go get you some ice cream? No. I would be so mad at you if you got up to do that, so don't you dare. Why not? It's not much of a sacrifice. After all, you're carrying our child. And what a blessing that is. I mean, there was a time I thought I'd never be able to have another child. It is a true blessing. I can't imagine not having our little M in our lives, and the boys feel the same way. She sighed. Speaking of the boys, do you think JoJo is going to be okay? Yes, I do. I actually think he was a little washed out on football. It was something he said a few weeks ago. So he may not be as disappointed as we think, though I know he's sad over the loss and feeling like he let his teammates down. Still, he's going to rise up. He's going to heal and figure out what he wants to do. He just looked so down earlier today, Bella said, and that hurts my heart. Well, he might have seemed down, but part of that was because he was in pain. I mean, physical pain. So that probably had something to do with it. She nodded. Yes, and once he came home and took the pain meds, they really knocked him out. Yeah, and I don't like him taking them, so I'm going to ask Jeffy for some of her herbal pain pills. Jordan said they work really well, Bella said. Well, they'll be going into mass production soon, Mark offered, and that's going to piss off some pharmaceutical companies. We're having to get all our ducks in a row legally so that the FDA thugs can't step in and try to block it. It's all in the timing, and we have to get congressmen and senators who will take our side if it comes down to that. Bella sighed. The world is so filled with evil and wickedness. Trying to stop healthy alternatives and pushing harmful drugs, attempting to get everyone addicted. It's so evil. That's what we're fighting. The evil, the darkness. We expect it. We're on the battlefield, babe. We will fight until the end. She snuggled closer to her warrior husband. So when does it end? Mark smiled. When Jesus comes again. Bella yawned. I am so looking forward to that day. Me too, baby. Me too. New scene. Same evening. Make sure you hold her head, Mickey said softly. Jeremy nodded. Mom, you've said that about 10 times now. Jeff smiled as he watched his youngest son sit on the small couch in the hospital room and gaze down at his baby sister. He was being very careful to hold her gently and to not let her head fall. He leaned forward and kissed her forehead, which made Jeff's heart tumble. Danny boy had already had his turn, but still leaned over and also kissed his sister's forehead. What do you think, guys? Jeff asked. She's so little, Dan said. Jeremy nodded. Well, Mickey said, she's going to grow up pretty fast. By this time next year, she's going to be like triple what she is now and walking around, so we have to enjoy every single minute of her being tiny. Speaking of that, Jeff said as he pulled out his phone, look up here, guys. Jeff snapped several pics and then switched over to video. Mickey complained when he turned the camera on her, which made him laugh. Why not get you in the video? You're beautiful too, he said. She shook her head. I'm sure I look a mess right now. Mick, you look amazing right now. You just gave birth to a baby, and your face is glowing, and your eyes are shining, and your hair... He stopped and smiled. Well, your hair is a mess, but even that's cute. He handed the phone to Dan. Here, son, take some video while I give little Scarlett back to your mom. Dan took the phone while Jeff gently took the baby from Jeremy and handed her to Mickey, who immediately started cooing and nuzzling her little daughter. You're going to be so cherished, Mickey said softly. You will never know the ugliness that I knew my entire life. Your entire life until about 14 years ago. From the time you married me, your life has been a dream, right? She laughed. Yep, you were my knight in shining armor. I still am, he said softly. I will keep you safe, always. He looked over at his sons and back to the bundle in his wife's arms. And you too, Scarlett, and your brothers, sweet girl. They will always protect you and keep you safe. Right, guys? The boys nodded solemnly. Yes, sir, they mumbled. When the phone started ringing, Dan quickly handed it to his dad. Jeff looked at the phone and smiled and accepted the video call and pointed the phone at his wife. Mickey looked up at the phone and smiled. Rissa! Hey again. Rissa giggled. Hey, Mickey. Jeff, point the phone at Scarlett better. I can only see half her face. Jeff adjusted. Better? Yep. So how's my little niece doing, Marissa said. She's doing awesome, Mickey answered. She was just saying hello to her brothers. Hey guys, Rissa said. What do you think? Hey Aunt Rissa, I think she's pretty awesome, Dan answered. Me too, Jeremy added. So when is your baby going to be born, Dan asked. Well, that's why I'm calling about your cousin. I'm in the car right now, on the way to the hospital. What? Really? Oh my goodness, Rissa, how close are your contractions, Mickey said. They're 12 minutes apart, but they've been 15 minutes apart for about 4 hours. And my doctor wants me to go in and get checked. Oh, I'm so excited, Rissa. I'm so sorry. I wish I could be there for you. It's okay, Mick. I'm good. Chris's mom has been so good to me, and she's on her way, and she'll be here in about 4 hours, and I have like a gazillion friends out here. Why does that not surprise me? Have you called Jeffy and Cam? No, they're next, though Jeffy probably already knows. Mickey giggled. Hey, Chris, how you holding up, buddy? Jeff asked. Marissa turned the phone toward him. You know me, calm under pressure. Well, you don't get to be an AIC if you're not. He's lying to you, Marissa put in. He almost couldn't put on his own shoes. Jeff laughed. It's okay, Coley. I won't tell anyone. Well, I won't tell Jason anyway. Well, thanks a lot, man, Chris said. Marissa suddenly moaned. Oh, wow. This is a hard one. Oh, Chris, she cried. Breathe, Rissa, Mickey coached. Breathe, sweetie. Rissa took several deep breaths. Oh, wow. That was the hardest one. Darn it, Mickey, that one hurt bad. Why didn't you tell me it hurt so much? Mickey giggled. I didn't want to scare you. Great. Well, now I am scared. Me too, Chris said, making everyone laugh. Rissa looked at her phone. Jeffy's trying to call me. Take the call. She'll be able to help you better than me. Okay, bye, Mick. I love you. The call ended. Jeff immediately put the phone down and went to comfort his wife, who was now crying. She's going to be okay, Mick. She's in good hands. Mickey nodded and sniffed. I just wish I could be there for her. I know. But, babe, it didn't work out that way, and we can't do anything about it, so what can we do other than pray for her? You're right, she said as she wiped at her face. She sighed. Jeff, it's getting late, and I need to sleep some. I guess you need to take the boys home and take care of business, and I'll see you guys bright and early in the morning. I hate to leave you. It's just the one night, and I really need to sleep. Tomorrow, we'll bring our daughter to her new home, and we'll all be together. Jeff nodded. I can't wait. New scene. Cam stood at the window that looked out over the front lawn of the Keno estate. He and Jeffy had married on that lawn under a white canopy of flowers and ribbons. He smiled. He'd had to talk her into marriage. He thought he would lose the argument, but somewhere inside his mind, he stood up and became a man. He'd explained to Jeffy his version of male and female, husband and wife, each of their roles, and how God established the sanctity of marriage. He took the lead, and surprisingly, Jeffy followed. It was hard for her at first. They both knew that Jeffy's brain was way beyond his capacity, and there was no way he could keep up with her intellectually. She learned, however, that she could trust him to keep their family safe, to lead them, and to keep her mind in check. And once she'd begun to trust him, she found she was able to relax her brain and let go and just be, and she found that to be not only enjoyable, but also an aphrodisiac. Sighing, he turned from the window and gazed at her. She'd just gotten off the phone with the girl who had actually been his best friend almost his whole life, Marissa Daly, now Marissa Coley. Who would have known that his female best friend would end up marrying another guy who was also one of his best friends in the world? Chris Coley had been one of Jeffy's bodyguards when she left the country back when everyone was trying to end her life, and he and Cam had worked closely together. Chris had been severely wounded in the line of duty, but he'd survived. And now Chris and Marissa were married, and he was the chief agent in charge at the Ameritech New York office, and they were about to have their first child any day now. Any time now. Cam sighed as he looked at his own family. Jeffy sat in the rocking chair next to their bed, nursing their son. He shook his head. He had a son, and he intended to be as good a father as Grandmaster Keno, as Ricky Keno, as Joey and Mark Adams and Jeff Davis. His eyes moistened, and Jeffy glanced up at him with a sweet smile. "You are," she said. He gave a soft laugh. "I guess I forgot to block you." She made a face. I wasn't trying. It just jumped out at me. "I've actually noticed you getting stronger and stronger in feeling and reading others. You diagnosed Gabe and Taylor and Bree from 10 miles away." She nodded. "Well, actually, I should be able to do it whether it's 10 miles or thousands of miles. It's all of a matter of what I believe I can do at the time. And sometimes I feel strong, and other times not so strong." He went to her and kissed the top of her head, then leaned down and gently kissed the cheek of his nursing son. "And how do you feel right now?" She smiled. "Like I can take on the world." And she frowned. And, what is it, Jeffy?" She drew several deep breaths. "Oh, dear. This trip to Georgia, it's going to test us. It's going to test us all." She blinked up at her husband. He stood with his eyebrows raised. "You got to give me more than that, baby." She sighed and closed her eyes and moaned. She shook her head as tears welled and spilled over. I can't see it. I just know it's going to be trying. I see anger and rage. I see crying. I see a knife coming down and piercing skin. I see someone covered in bruises. I see darkness. No, I see light. I can't see clearly. Are you sure we're in Georgia?" She closed her eyes again and then nodded her head. She looked down as little Eli let go and started to fuss. "He feels it," she said softly. Cam lifted Eli up into his arms and softly bounced him. "It's okay, little guy," he whispered. "Daddy's got you." He put him up against his chest and patted his back gently. Jeffy sat back and closed her eyes, stretching her muscular legs out in front of her and pointing her toes. "Jeffy, can you give me anything else?" She sat there for a minute before she answered. "I'm sorry, Cam. I can't pinpoint it. It seems like a series of events. I see a knife. I feel pain. I see a gun. Maybe several guns. Someone floundering in the water, drowning maybe. I see like something big and dark. A man? A demon. They don't want us to do this thing. They don't want us to accomplish this Thanksgiving feeding of the 5,000. It will start something nationwide. The little town of Pine Forest, Georgia is going to show the world something, and they can't let that happen." "Who can't?" "The dark forces, the bad guys." He breathed deeply. "Will someone die?" She sat quietly another minute. I can't tell. Maybe. I almost don't want to go now." He frowned. "Well, that doesn't sound like the warrior girl I know." "Well, the girl you knew who was ready to take on the world is now a mother, and all I can think about is protecting my child." "Is Elijah in danger?" She sighed. "I don't think so." He nodded. "So, we could stay home, I guess, but does that feel right to you, Jeffy?" She shook her head. "Of course not." "We stay safe at home while the rest of my family ventures out into the battlefield?" "No way, Cam. Of course we'll go." He nodded. "I was hoping you would see the error in being afraid to go. Jeffy, God trusts you. He gives you what you need to see. He gives it to you, to warn us all. I know he doesn't expect you to chicken out." She sighed. "Sorry, I had a moment of weakness. Do I have to be Supergirl at all times?" He laid Eli in his crib and turned to take Jeffy in his arms. "No, babe. You don't have to be all the time. Just most of the time. I'll let the family know to expect trouble. We'll take God's warning seriously, and we will accomplish our goal in Georgia of feeding 5,000. I'll make sure of it." She raised her face to him, and he kissed her softly. "Now, You get some sleep. I'm going to go speak with your dad real quick. She nodded. Thanks for taking care of business. I love you, Cameron Wallace. And I love you, June Flower, Keno Wallace. New scene. Still that same evening. Ricky came quietly back in the bedroom, slowly climbed into bed and closed his eyes. He opened them again, though, when his beautiful wife rolled over and snuggled up to him. Was that Jeff? He put his arm around her. I was trying not to wake you. She gave a soft laugh. Well, you failed miserably. Sorry. It's okay. I was just kidding anyway. I heard your phone buzz, and I knew you were going out to keep from waking me, which, by the way, is very sweet. He laughed. Yep, that's me. I'm a sweetheart. He gave her a quick kiss. That was nice, she purred. So, you didn't answer me. Was that Jeff again? Is everything okay? No, it wasn't Jeff. It was Dad. Jeffy has had some kind of ominous premonitions about this trip to Georgia, and Dad and Cam are calling everyone so that we will be prepared and ready to do battle. Bree sighed. Great. She was silent a moment. Of course, Satan doesn't want us to accomplish our goal in Georgia because it might bring too much light to the world and it might touch hearts that he doesn't want touched. Ricky nodded. Exactly. But we won't let that stop us. We'll put on the full armor of God and go for it. Bree cuddled up closer. I love it when you talk tough. He rolled over onto her. Not toxic? She laughed. Not toxic. Actually, pretty seductive. That's what I was going for, he said, as he kissed her. New scene. Taylor sat up in bed. She and Gabe had been so good about not sneaking in to see each other in the middle of the night. Actually, Gabe had been good about it. She, on the other hand, longed to be in his presence all the time. She thought about the fact that they were headed back to his home in Georgia in the morning, and that she wouldn't be as physically close to him as she is now with him being right down the hall. Add to that the fact that he would probably remain in Georgia until after Christmas, while she would be coming back to Cali, and that made her feel like she was going to fall completely apart. It put her in a panic. She probably needed to share these feelings with her mom or dad or grandfather or grandmother. Young Eric had his support group always at his beck and call. His, quote, brothers, JoJo, Logan, and now Gabe. Taylor had no female cousins her age. How she longed for a sister. Then her eyes lit up. She did have Jordan, who would probably eventually be her sister-in-law. She felt certain she could share her feelings with her. Nodding her head, she made the decision that she would do just that. But not tonight. Tonight, she would head to the place that she longed to be. Swinging her legs over the side of the bed, she went to the bathroom to freshen up, then headed to her door, peeked out to make sure no one was around, and padded down the hall to the first door on the left past the staircase. Easing the door open, she peeked in and saw immediately that he wasn't in bed because his beautiful silhouette stood out in front of the solid glass French doors that led out to the balcony. He turned around. Tay, is that you? Yes, can I come in? Of course. She crept in and turned to silently close the door. He walked to the bed and turned on the bedside lamp. She smiled at him and looked him over. His chest was bare. He wore some navy blue and black plaid flannel pajama bottom that rode low on his hips. She drew a deep breath. I needed to see you. Well, I'm glad because I was just thinking about coming to see you. Really? He smiled. Is that so hard to believe? She shrugged. Well, you're much stronger than I am. Not really. I just have more fear. Fear? More men for me to answer to. Your dad, your brother, your uncles, your cousins, and my dad. She gave a soft laugh as she came around the bed to stand in front of him. He looked her over. Her long, dark hair fell in waves over her shoulders and down almost to her waist. She wore a charcoal gray nightshirt with the word believe written in bright pink cursive. The shirt came almost to her knees. He frowned. What, no Tweety Bird tonight? It was getting too small for me. He smiled. You're not even fully grown yet, are you? She frowned. I'm not a child, if that's what you're trying to say. He nodded and reached out and touched her cheek with one finger, ran it down her face to her chin, over her chin, and down her neck, and finally stopped at the ribbing of her shirt. I'm not saying that at all, because that would be a total vibe killer. She giggled. Besides, you're probably not finished growing either, right? He nodded. Yep. I probably have a few more inches to go. Reaching out, he pulled her to him, raised her face, and kissed her softly. He pulled away to look at her again. Her eyes were closed now. She swayed on her feet. The pull was so strong. She opened her eyes and smiled up at him. So, why are you awake? He asked her. She sighed. I was thinking about things. They're about to change, and I don't want them to. He suddenly lifted her up into his arms and laid her on the bed. Let's snuggle for a few minutes. He climbed in beside her, pulled the covers up over them, and pulled her close. He kissed her a few more times and then smiled at her. Okay, tell me about the things you say are about to change. We're going to Georgia, and you won't be just down the hall from me anymore. You'll be at your house. I'll be at the inn, and then at our new house maybe, depending on how much work has been done by the renovators. We'll probably not see each other much like while we're there because we're going to be working so hard, and the week is going to go by so fast, and then I'm going to leave and come back here, and you're going to stay in Georgia with your family. And I understand that you miss your family and want to be with them. But for me, you are my family. And the thought of being away from you is horrifying. It's like making me feel sick, and I can't stand it. He pulled her close and held her a few minutes. Oh, Tay, you are so sweet. How is that sweet? It's idiotic. I'm supposed to be almost an adult, grown, but I'm acting like an idiot. We have this amazing opportunity to go to Pine Forest and do something awesome for people, and I should be thinking about that, but all I can think about is you and how much I'm going to miss you when it's all over, and I know I'm supposed to focus on the moment in front of me, but I'm really having a hard time doing that, and that just makes me so immature, I know, but I can't help it. Okay, I get it. And I don't think it makes you immature, it's just that our love is so powerful. It's hard for me too, Taylor. I want to be with you all the time. I'm totally in love with you, and the need for you is powerful. But you wouldn't have much respect for me if instead of working hard at something, I just laid around with you all day, every day, right? I mean, I'm supposed to be acting like a man, and a man has work he has to do. I have to work hard at this giant undertaking that God has asked Rose to accomplish. I know you understand that, right? Yes. And then this might be the last time I spend Christmas with my family is like, their kid. So I have to treasure that, right? Taylor nodded. And I'm going to have 2 new siblings that I will hardly even know because I'll be gone most of the time. And I want to know them. And I want you to know them. And you will, and I will, because I intend to make that happen somehow. Taylor, I intend to eventually marry you. You know that, right? I mean, we usually don't actually say the words, but maybe you need to hear it. That is my intention. Get through this coming holiday, get back here and start training to be a jet. That right there is a good job. You and I will also work on our ministry. I'll attend your high school graduation, ask your father for your hand in marriage, ask you to marry me, and then assuming you say yes, plan a wedding, or let you and the moms plan a wedding, and then live with you and make love to you and have babies with you and be totally happy. That's what I intend. But I can't do any of that if I don't work hard to make something of myself so that I can support you. And that working hard means I have to be away from you sometimes. And don't think that I haven't thought that you too might have your own intentions and plans that you just haven't discussed with me yet, and that's okay. You don't have to tell me your exact plans. I mean, you might want to go to college or reach for something. I hope you want to continue on and dance because you're like so good at it. But you know what, Tay? It would be nice to know that you're thinking along the same lines as me. It would be nice to know if you're not. He glanced at her. Not that you have to make any decisions right now, but I'm just saying, let's get through this time apart, and then, Tay, we can be together. Always. She smiled up at him, her eyes moist with unshed tears. Oh, Gabe, that was beautiful. You were right. I did need to hear that. And I have a confession to make. I've been thinking about being your wife for a long time now. It's all I want to do. Yes, I want to pursue dance because it's fun and it's a challenge. Still, my main goal is to be your wife and have lots of babies and be the best mother I can be. Gabe closed his eyes. Thank you, Father, he whispered. He rolled over and kissed her very passionately, lifted his head and smiled down at her. Thank you for that. It's really good to hear what you've been thinking. And now I have to backtrack because it wouldn't be right for me to insist that you not look at any other guys. It's your senior year. It's a special time, and you are only 17. You might change your mind about me. I will not. You might. I'd be crazy. Still, you might. I'm just saying that if you do, I'll understand. I don't want you to feel pressure. That's all I'm saying. Okay, I don't feel pressure, she said. He ran his hand over her face. I love you, Tay. I love you, Gabe. He kissed her again and again, then sat up and pulled the covers off. Where are you going? Taylor asked. I'm going to walk you back to your room. Oh, please, Gabe, please hold me a few more minutes. I'm not ready for this night to end. He sighed. It's a little, you're a little too tempting. Just 15 more minutes. You can set a timer. I'm struggling, he confessed. She snuggled up close to him, making him grunt. I won't let you fall, she whispered. Gabe shook his head. She was so innocent. Blowing out a breath, he pulled her close. 15 minutes, he conceded. Close your eyes and dream about our plans. She smiled and sighed in pleasure, glad that she decided to share her fears with the guy she loved. New scene. Shelley glanced at the clock as Eric came back in the room and got in bed. Is everything okay? Right now, yes. She snuggled close. Thank you, she said softly. For what? For always taking care of business. If something happens and you have to get up and handle it, you always do it without complaining. You just take care of business no matter how tired you are. He smiled. What's the alternative? She sighed. Well, good question. I guess taking care of business is the only thing you can do. You can't just shrug your shoulders and go back to bed, huh? So, what business had to be taken care of? He sighed. Jeffy had a premonition. Cam felt like it was strong enough that we should warn everyone. So he discussed it with me, and then he called Joey, and I called Jason and Ricky just to give them all a heads up. And who called Mark and Justin and Jeff? Oh, and Keegan. Joey called Keegan, and Mark. Jason called Justin. Ricky will call Jeff, and we'll talk to young Eric and Gabe and Taylor. Mark will talk to JoJo and Logan. Logan will talk to Melody. Melody will talk to her family. Anyone else you want to know about? She gave a soft laugh. Nope. I guess all you men will work tirelessly to make sure everyone is protected, huh? Eric smiled. You think? He sighed. We'll do our best, with God's help. She laid her head on his chest and ran her hand over his heart. And did the premonition have anything to do with you? No, not specifically anyway. Why? Are you worried about me? Not really. If God was going to let you go, I don't think he would have gone to all the trouble of bringing you back to life. Eric smiled. I just got a message from God in my head just now. Really? What did he say? He said, no trouble at all. She giggled. He does have a sense of humor. Eric nodded with a smile. They lay silently together for a few minutes, Shelley's hand moving slowly back and forth across Eric's chest, across his scar. Eric patted her hand. Nope, sorry. It was Shelley who broke the silence. I'm so grateful. Eric patted her hand. I know you are. I am too. I'm getting to lie here next to you, to feel you pressed against me, to hear your voice, to feel your hand move over me. Getting to know those 5 precious children in the next room and the new one across the hall. My heart is so full, and I'm so grateful. Shelley sniffed. A few months ago, I was in a world of hurt. I didn't want to live without you. I know that's selfish, because we have children that needed me, but just between you and me, I didn't want to live anymore. Not without you. He pushed her off his chest onto the bed and leaned over her. I know that trauma has not healed yet. It may take a while. So don't live in the past. Live in the right now. Right now, as you said, we have so much to be grateful for. I'm right here. We're conversing. I can touch you, he said, as he stroked his hand down her soft cheek. And I'm about to show you that we are as young as ever. His head dipped. He kissed her. Shelley sighed. Eric Kino, I'm so lucky to have you, and I'm so in love with you. Shelley Kino, I love you too. And I thank God every day that he sent me to find you. And now here we are, with our children, having children, and maybe, if young Eric does what I think he's going to do, we'll soon have a great-grandchild. The circle of life is beautiful and precious as long as we are able to steadfastly teach our children that God is real. As long as they know that, the circle of life will be filled with joy, because they'll all try to carry on the legacy, to live in honor and integrity and love. God doesn't want to lose one of his children. And I know a little bit of how he feels. Father, I pray you will send your angels to watch over our children, to lead them and guide them. I know they have lessons to learn, but please protect them from the dark forces that would steal their souls. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen, Shelley whispered. And that is the end of Book 11, Circle of Life. In Jesus' name, Part 3. Book number 12 is called Feed My Sheep, in Jesus' name. And I can't wait to read it to you.